And maybe we'll start with a general question just to initiate our discussion, because, gentlemen, as you know, the fintech field is known for obtaining and using sensitive client data. And we heard before about the heavy fines of financial institutions for violating different sets of regulations, and actually about the constant security threat on these financial institutions and corporations in general. And when that being said, what do you think is the best way for fintech companies and financial institutions to protect themselves on cybersecurity aspect? Let's talk about it. So who wants to start?
So I'll start. I'll start the thing. I mean, we see ourselves as an R&D company, right? That's what we do. We create products, but we're very much focused on R&D. A little bit different, I think, than maybe some of the other companies which do different stuff. But we really develop products. Now, not everybody develops products, but our product is based on R&D. So it needs to start from the beginning. When a developer starts writing code, then he needs to understand from day one that there are various standards that he needs to meet to when writing that code. It can't be just getting a great developer starting to work, but it needs to be with the standards. So there's our standards like OWASP, and there's frameworks that we build into our development processes that make sure that from the beginning, when we start developing a product, that all security standards are met in place. So once you have the framework and the building blocks set up right, then you need to build on top of them. And that's what we see ourselves. So there are various security standards that we meet and they are very important for any company that builds inside any kind of code that needs to meet that. And there's packages that you need to use, and it needs to be deployed from the beginning to the end. And when I assure a company like GRC, and Tom, you'll talk about that, but when we implement the ISO standards, it's a very high level standard, but at the end of the day, it really needs to build into the building blocks of your code and onto your deployment. And I guess there's some other things that we can talk about, but let's have a conversation around that, I guess.
So complying with security standards, yeah, definitely. Tom, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so echoing on what Guy said, so definitely planning ahead and having the security implemented into your development process is important. But I think in a more high level and taking it a bit even further high level, and I think it's really important to understand that while you build a security program, and it doesn't matter at what stage you are, you always need to look at a few elements and make sure that your cyber program meets your business needs. So in early stage, you probably won't be able, due to resources or maturity, to do ISO 27001 or do the SOC 2. But still you will have to present some sort of assurance to the CISO on the other side that you are keeping and handling the assets in a very secure manner. So I think planning and adjusting your cybersecurity program should start from early phase, and it definitely should deal with the product. It should deal with back office and operational security. And it's a really case by case, because you need to take into account the market you're working in, the companies you're selling to, the assets you will be handling. That also is a big factor, and it will definitely have input on your program. If you deal with credit card information, you will have to do PCI at some point. Earlier the better, so you won't be exposed to anything. If you deal with PII, which is personal identifying information, you probably will need to meet with different privacy regulation. And again, every location, GDPR, as you know, is in Europe, New York Shield is in New York, CCPA is in California. So there's a holistic way you have to look at it. And then again, budgetary issues are what will limit the prioritization of your tasks.
Definitely, most definitely. And Upendra, if you have something to add on top of that,
absolutely.
How do you see the security measurements that fintech and financial institutions needs to adopt?
Yeah. And I completely agree with Guy. And so here is the thing, right? We have to really think why this compliance and financial regulations and punitive action has been there, right? So when we go back and look at financial institutions, fintech companies, they take personal information for the right reasons, and they have credit card, bank account, social security for right reasons. As we are going into the digitized age and we are going through all this digital transformation, and instead of cash, we are using digital money, right? That's where the entire fintech business is all about, is how do we ease the businesses and the financial transactions of our consumers and our customers. What has happened is that during this particular journey, as we are going through this particular transformation, when internet came in, when mobile payments came in, when 2008 financial crisis came in, there has been some mishandling, right? So the intention of this regulation, if we as security professionals, we as vendors over here, take the financial regulation with a mindset that these are right thing for our customers. These are right thing for our, the entire ecosystem of financial, to build trust in the organization. If we go and approach these regulations and these fines, if you will, with that approach, then we have a very different mindset to protect, right? So then we come up with there are ISO 27K, there is, shift left, shift up, all those kinds of things constitute that are we treating the trust that customers are putting in fintech with respect? That is the bottom line. So everything falls in place, and I completely agree with Tom and Nir that we have to shift left. We have to bake it into the security, we bake it into the life cycle, and all that falls in place later.
Okay, thanks for that, Upendra. Definitely eye-opening. And Tom, I want to get back to you with this question about, again, about security, but you often design different fintech solutions for different clients of yours. And, it will be interesting to understand from your point of view what kind of cyber factors you take into consideration when you do that. If you can share this point with our audience, it will be interesting to understand.
Yeah, definitely. So I mentioned it briefly when we talked about the earliest question, but I think the factors you have to look at is definitely the assets you will be dealing, processing, saving, or whatever you do with them. And that will affect how you need to secure them, because there will be different regulations or different standards for each kind of asset. Again, credit cards you have to handle in a very specific way as the PCI instruct you. If somehow you have some sort of health information, because you're in fintech and you do insurance, but still you get some sort of health information, then if you work in the States, then HIPAA might be applied. So again, the assets are very crucial. The market you're working in geographically and the type of companies you're working with, they tend to have similar requirements from their vendor, as they themselves have internal risk management. So they want to manage the risk their vendor present with them with. And so the company and the market, the companies in the market, that's basically the factors you should consider. And it's important to look at all of the ecosystem of your product. So it's not just the UI or the platform, the cloud environment that you deliver and you provide with, or it's also the development process. It's also the physical security, if it's relevant. Sometimes you're just cloud hosted and it doesn't really matter. But you need to look at the whole ecosystem, because Upendra can share, and I'm sure he's working with a lot of vendors, and each vendor is unique because the solution is unique, and therefore the risk is unique. So you really have to bring it to show Upendra or his peers that you thought about it, and you're going to handle his assets in a very secure manner, at least at the level that he is expecting it to be, or he is dealing and securing his own assets.
Upendra, we can hear it from you. How do you see the, let's say, 3 top fintech security concerns that companies should address?
Yeah, so if we, again, continuing on the theme of fintechs, right? If we look at the top three things, right? So let's look at the trends and why we are here, so that we can go ahead and look into a crystal ball. The first thing is the financial industry. If you recall, we have been using cash for exchanges of goods. As the internet came in, the consumer technology trends started, growing. So that's why we started having mobile phones and Google wallets and Apple wallets. So started putting cards over there because consumer is there, right? Credit card form factor went away, or it's still there, but it is more in digitized form. So that is one trend where consumers are going more towards, the different kinds of gadgets, if you will, IoT and all. The second trend that is happening is the enterprises themselves are going cloud, right? So most of ours, it's no longer a four-wall boundary. It's the boundaries are all over the map, right? So that is another trend for the fintech world. And then the third trend that is happening is because of all these newer attacks and financial crisis that we had in 2008, the third trend is the regulatory trend, right? So these are the three trends. So it's very interesting as to what happens. These trends are also in the hands of attackers. So they know where the gold mine is, which is in the fintech as well as healthcare and critical infrastructure and all that. But fintech is one of the industries. So they are after three things, right? So one is they are after the identity takeover, so that they can, basically take over the identity and replicate. The second thing they are after is a data loss, right? It's not just identity; it's your PII, other kind of data that they can take. And then third thing is committing fraud, right? So that is what they are after. So to answer your question, from the security perspective, if you look at it, there are these multiple channels, and where we don't have any boundaries. So multiple channels and attack can come in. There are multiple boundaries, so it's an omni-channel attack surface. Then we also have an enterprise that does not have these four-wall boundaries. The top three attacks then come as malware. That's the way to basically go after this particular data and to commit fraud. The second thing is identity takeover, right? I mean, impersonating people. And then the third thing is data loss. I would have said DDoS, last year, because last year, if you saw, there was the 2.7 terabits per second worth of bit fat pipe that was pumped to bring the system down. This year, we haven't seen that in the industry. And I think it may be because people are after the top three things.
So to summarize, lack of cash, cloud-based services, and regulatory changes, the frequent regulatory changes are the trends. Guy, how do you see the main trends from financial institutions in your space?
Yeah, and I guess everybody can speak from their own experiences, and we deal with a very I don't know if it's a niche, but this mobile capturing solution. So when I'd say the first trend we hear in this is, first of all, GDPR, right? So depending on the where are we keeping the data that we're capturing, right? We're capturing mobile WhatsApp communications that traders are doing with their customers. Where are we keeping this data? That's a really important trend, and we kind of solve that by when we take the information, we always send it to the existing archive of the financial customer, so we don't care where it is. We can solve that GDPR issue or any kind of specific regulatory issue that any geography has by sending the information, routing it to wherever he wants to. But it goes more than that, because the basic questions would always be ISO. Do you have ISO 2717? Do you have ISO 271? And do you have data DR sites or DR plans? There's the standard questionnaires that we go through. But if you really speak about what they're asking about recently, it's a lot of everybody wants to work with their own end-to-end encryption. So our financial customers, they want to make sure that we don't have any ability to view any of their information. So we are doing end-to-end encryption today from some of the bigger customers. So they're bringing their own key. So BYOK is a huge trend. You know, Zoom put it into their solutions, and others are putting it into their solutions because they don't want us or anybody else without that key, with the ability to get and see the messages, because these are very confidential. If, you know, Tom mentioned earlier, HIPAA compliant, or in the financial world, it'll be, you know, all these other regulations that we can talk about a little bit later, I guess, again. But under all of these regulations, it needs to be archived, but they don't want us to archive it. And that's where the GDPR, together with Bring Your Own Key, comes into play. We're encrypting it end to end, and then shifting it off to the customer, where he opens it up and he has it in his own premises, and we don't have to deal with any kind of breaches.
Super interesting trends, and definitely seems that they are, you know, it's obvious why we see them in this period of time. When we saw everything shifting to the web, when we saw during 2020, no one met face to face, and everything was done on the web. So of course the cyber hacks were on the rise, and obviously these are the trends that are following this kind of very interesting era of humanity. So thanks, Guy. Thanks for summarizing that.
Let me add one more point, which I've seen recently a lot, and that's really, it was really strange for us as a, you know, small company. We're only about 60 employees, but the banks that we're working with, you know, they have very strong DLP procedures and products that, you know, are enforced on, you know, their emails in the organization, and they wanted us to have the same strict kind of DLP inside. And, you know, our developers weren't even used to that. They used to be, you know, being able to send out an email to anybody. But now there, you know, there's this pop-up that says, "Oh, you're sending out an email outside the organization. Are you?" And my guys weren't used to this, and we had to put in these strong DLPs inside the company. And these are, we're hearing it more and more. I mean, 2 years ago, nobody asked us as a small company to have DLP, but now we have to have DLP. So it's just another of these trends of customers asking for more and more, you know, requirements.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, guys. Sorry if I'm jumping in over here, but I'm just adding, you know, to what Nir is saying. We are doing that as well, right? I mean, so because of the third-party life cycle TLM risks that we are seeing with supply chain and all that, it's just, you know, because we have our hearts at the right place, you know, we are requesting vendors and partners, you know, to also comply with those similar kind of regulations that we have. So as you are an entrepreneur, as you are, you know, trying to sell to fintech world, and I'm sure there are a few people here or they will be listening to the recording later on, please consider this in mind. Whatever Guy is mentioning is super critical, right? When you are building products, when you are selling to the fintech, you know, customers, it is super imperative to comply by the similar regulations. I have a similar cadence, I have similar discipline in security and similar rigor. So that is pretty much expected.
Of course, and we talked before about the heavy fines. There are no space for mistakes here. There's no room to make any wrong step. And you know, hearing you guys, Upendra and Guy, talking about different requirements and demands from the financial institutes, the giants of the industry. Tom, maybe it will be interesting also to hear from your end about the requirements you tackle from the fintech companies you're developing products for. What do you see in your space? Oh, Tom, I think you're in.
So I have to say that mostly we get startup companies coming to us when their clients asking them for their different requirements. Usually, usually startup doesn't come to us and say, well, listen, so we have some extra budget and we want to spend it on security. And when they do come to us, first of all, I'm telling them that I think it's a good sign, because they always come with like, this client asking to do now SOC 2, And I always give them the other side of it, and I'm saying this is good. This means you got to a size of clients and a type of clients that are significant, and you're on the right track. So that's something good. And I think usually I can mention, I think it's penetration testing. Usually they want us to do some sort of penetration testing for the platform. And the rest are around compliance. So it will be the ISO 27001, which is very, very known and globally accepted, the SOC 2, and PCI. That's usually what they come with. And the ISO SOC 2 and PCI holds a lot of different mini projects inside of them. So they talk about awareness, and they talk about product security, they talk about infrastructure security, they talk about processes within the organization. So they hold a lot of what their clients wants to see. And it also helps them with the questionnaires that I'm sure every startup knows, and go through. The questionnaires are just exhaustive, long, takes a lot of time, and they really put you in a struggle to grow, to scale, because you can't grow and scale fast without answering these questionnaires. It's a must. While having ISO, SOC 2, PCI, and the different things already done, it's relatively more easy and quick to answer these questionnaires. So that's what we see with startup company mostly.
Why can't we have just one questionnaire for everybody? I mean, this is so annoying. I mean, it drives us crazy. The amount of hours we're spending, our security guys, on answering these questionnaires that Tom just mentioned. I mean, everybody has his own format, and then there's some of these standards, like the CAIQ standard that we answer this questionnaire. There's the ATAC standard, I believe, and it just goes on and on. It's just,
Guy,
I know, fix that.
I can actually give a few practical tips around questionnaires.
Go ahead, Tom. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
So I think every startup company needs to, at the right time, to make a decision about the revenue. That beneath that revenue, you say, okay, I won't be handling this questionnaire. I'll send them a white label or some PDF that I have that explain everything we do, and it really needs to be a good PDF that explain everything, so the other side can read and understand what you do. And from above a certain revenue, you start to decide on, okay, I'm going to answer these questionnaires. I'm going to answer this questionnaire once, and maybe if they have any other questions, we can put it under some sort of a contract. So, and it is a framework that you need to build within your organization to enable yourself to grow, but at the same time respect the other side and allow him to get the answers that he's looking for. Because again, as Apendra said, we are all here for the same reason, which is providing secure financial services to our clients. Our clients come to us to use these financial services, knowing that we will secure their data and use it wisely. And we cannot betray this understanding, because this will be devastating for the whole ecosystem. Once the client loses the faith in the security of the fintech industry, we will all be without a job at the end.
Of course, we are in favor of the fintech industry, and in favor of the security of the fintech industry in this environment. It goes without saying, and I understand, Tom, that in GRC you can help different companies to structure their white papers and these kind of PDFs to answer all kinds of questionnaires, like a questionnaire template. And that's encouraging to hear that. Guy, you started talking about different regulations and aspects of compliance, and you deal a lot with mobile communication. So, are there any specific rules and regulations that are basically mentioning the mobile communication aspects?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Nir. So every geography has a different set of regulations, and they're all a little bit different. So, I mean, the biggest market that we sell into, which is the United States, the Financial Regulatory Authority, the biggest one is FINRA. And FINRA set out a set of regulations that state very clearly that text messaging and instant messaging needs to be retained. They don't talk about security there. They talk about retention. So they don't care if the message that the broker is sending his customer is encrypted, as long as it's retained. And there's been massive fines. FINRA is a very strong regulatory authority, and it feels very confident on putting those fines on some of its regulations. We go over the sea in Europe, there's the MiFID II framework, which was built on MiFID I, which is a crazy huge framework, which we're not experts on, but there are a number of very set paragraphs on capturing of mobile communications, and they expand on the FINRA regulations. So it's not only text messaging, it's also voice calls recording.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to capture any kind of recording that you make to your customer. Now, it's not only the direct recordings, it's anything that can lead to a financial transaction. So even if it's a customer that's just doing some kind of marketing message to his customer, but he's not doing a sale itself, he's not sealing the transaction, buying or selling of the shares, for example, he's just sending in some information that of course needs to be recorded. And we go over all of this in APAC. Singapore has the MSA, it's the Monetary Singaporean Authority, and there's the Hong Kong Authority, I forget his name, and there's ASIC in Australia. So every country has its own set of regulations. The main common theme around all of them is retention of communications. And it is mainly inside the more modern financial countries where they have strong financial regulations. So you'd see less of these regulations in less advanced countries,
in developing countries. Yeah, and it will be also interesting to understand. I mean, you're saying it has to be recorded if it's a voice communication over mobile phone, but it doesn't necessarily has to be encrypted.
True. Yes.
So
that's right.
It's very paradoxal, like to say it. And what about text messages, WhatsApp, WeChat? Can we use them with our clients as financial institutions?
Well, you can use them if you can capture them. So a lot of our the story that we tell our customers, and they used to have a no texting policy. You're not allowed to send out text messages. They'll understand that doesn't work, and FINRA does not approve that. So a no texting policy doesn't solve the problem, because FINRA knows that these brokers are going to be communicating over text with their customers. And then moves to, okay, you're not allowed to text, but no WhatsApp policy. But that's ridiculous as well. As Israelis are on this, or anybody else, they know that there's no communication without WhatsApp. You're not going to speak to an Israeli without WhatsApp. And if you go to China, if you don't WeChat, then you're not communicating. So It's not a matter of texting or mobile, calling. You need to capture WeChat. So hiding it under the rug is not going to work. You need to capture the communications. And even though there is no very specific Chinese regulations, China is a huge financial market. In any of the Western countries, companies in the banks in the United States, and they're communicating with somebody in China, that needs to be captured because they're regulated. So the global world is making all of these regulations very complicated, because if you're a UK person, then you're communicating with somebody in a developing country, you need to capture those recordings. But in the United States, if you start recording, that might be a problem, because you're not allowed in some. You're not allowed in some states to have two-party consent. So it is complicated.
It is complicated, but definitely encouraging to hear that you can help companies to solve this issue. So contact Guy if you're trying to figure out how to navigate in between different regulations in the US market and different in other markets, of course. And Upendra, let's get back to you, because we started talking about different requirements of fintech companies when we started talking about mobile communication. And, in the last year, we all started working from home, and, suddenly we all started to use our WhatsApp, WeChat, or text messaging for basically for work purposes. So how do you see the work from home environment affecting different fintech companies in terms of cybersecurity aspects, of course? How do you see that?
Absolutely. And, before we go into work from home, one of the things I wanted to just comment on what Guy is saying, right? When We are, we are into this BNPL space, and there are obviously customers gonna call us, and even in my previous employers, right? I mean, customers call us, and they might have to fulfill the payment, so they're either credit card debt or whatever, right? I mean, it doesn't really matter what. There are requirements where they might have to fulfill the payment either by WhatsApp or either by Telegram, Signal, WeChat, text messages, for all we know, right? I mean, they might not have WhatsApp. So how do we securely fulfill those, and accept the payment information on text messages? These are some of the real practical requirements where the consumer technology, as I was talking about the three trends, right? Consumer technology trends, enterprise technology trends, and then regulatory trends, right? I mean, sometimes regulation and consumer technology trends, they butt head, right? So this is a very classic example. So Guy, thanks for pointing that particular thing out. Because of COVID, and I hope all you guys who are here, as well as people who are listening right now or today, I hope all of you are safe, your loved ones are safe. These are very, very tough times. When pandemic hit us, it was an immediate shelter in place. We all had to work from home. For safety of our employees, nothing can go beyond the safety of employees. We have to find a way to secure our employees, safe, make sure that their health is first, and then secure our systems, so that those kind of were a little bit contradictory goals, but we had to do it. So, we all were scrambling. I mean, to be honest with you, it was not that we prepared. We had work from home, right? I mean, people used to sometimes work from Friday, use VPN, the traditional ways of hopping onto the network, so that was all, fine. The problem was that particular risk was very limited, and now you are just expanding it beyond. Another thing is that while we were on this journey, lots of SaaS were been, we started opening up to lots of, we have human resources SaaS, so we have customer CRM SaaS, we have multiple SaaS. So at that particular point, when we started allowing the remote work, and that became more like a shelter in place, we started focusing on securing the home network. So, the way, we started doing was, okay, guys, how do we train people? Another problem that we started facing was customer support, right? In general, how do we take care of the customer support when the payment information or anything has been, addressed, and now the person is at home, right? I mean, if you call any financial institution, the customer support is now sitting in the at home and might be scribbling credit card away or whatever payment card away, right? So how do we secure that particular population? So that was another trend. So the way we started thinking about this problem is, okay, guys, safety first of our employees. Second thing is, segregate those people who are going to be high risk, in terms of they carry the real PII, and start locking it down from the zero trust perspective. Mm-hmm. And then we started a typical, prediction and all those kinds of things, prediction, protection, prevention, detection, recovery and response, all these multiple, tactics we started doing. And then we started actually understanding the behavior of that particular class of employees. So to answer your question, safety first, zero trust, and find out the high risk population or the employees of your team, and try to focus on them. So those were the three things we started doing.
And thanks for that, Upendra. I mean, you're talking about many aspects of the cybersecurity program. You're talking about prevention, detection, response, employee education, et cetera, et cetera. And, it will be interesting also to understand from your point of view, Tom, if you think that this kind of cybersecurity program can be outsourced. I mean, do you think, and we know it's complicated, right? to what extent do you think that the fintech company can outsource this kind of complex project to an external service provider?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I do want to piggyback right on what Upendra said. I think that actually the fact that remote work is much more accepted now after COVID, and that's basically expanding the cyber attack surface significantly. And I think that businesses not always aware of the surface attack that they're presenting to different malicious actors. So I think a good risk assessment, a good mapping of what you're exposing, it's really important, because as Upendra said, when it hit us, there was no time. Safety was first. Everybody worked from home. Let's just keep it running, see how we fix it along the way. So take a look back, see what you did, what you opened, see how you secure it. I think it's a very crucial time, and I think it's going to be with us for a while. So that's something that I really wanted to put in there. And in regards to outsourcing the program, I think it really, again, case by case, it really depends on the resources, mostly budget, but resources that you can put in on the program. If you have the capacity and the team that knows, and or you can get the team in-house that know how to build the program, how to conduct the program, how to perform the different tasks, it can definitely be in-house. If you don't have the capacity for it or the budget resources for it, it can also be outsourced. It can be a mix of both, having someone to come in and help build the program. Then some of the tasks will be handled internally. Some of the tasks will be handled by vendors. But again, the most important thing is make sure that the program support the business. And if it's outsourced or in-house, it can be both. Again, really depends on the budgetary and the maturity of the company.
Yeah, and when we usually deal with like sidekicks and stuff that are not part of the core business of the specific business, such as, I don't know, if you talk about car leasing, or if you talk about employees' meals or stuff like this. So we like to outsource these stuff. So I guess that my modest recommendation to our viewers and listeners will be, if you don't know how exactly to execute this kind of super complicated program, so probably Tom can help with this and his team. And Guy, maybe we'll ask you. I mean, you obtained this kind of certification with your company, and you now hold it. And maybe you'll share with our audience what were the main challenges of securing this kind of complicated certificate. Maybe we can learn something out of it.
Maybe. So the first thing as a small company is yes, take a consultant. I strongly advise take a consultant, and it definitely helped us a lot. And we're still using external consultants, not only for obtaining the ISO certifications, which we definitely needed help on that, but also, we need external penetration testers. We can't do it internally, and we want it externally. But that being said, I mean, the biggest challenge is, first of all, to get the internal buy-in. So we needed to have somebody dedicated that can drive the process. But luckily for Telemessage, our IT manager for the last 20 years is, he's very security minded, and he loves security, and he always wanted, and he on his own, even 5 years ago, when it was less important to Telemessage, we sold less to financial companies. He did his own CISO certification, so we needed somebody dedicated for that, and he's perfect. But then you also need management attention. I mean, he needed to get me on board in the beginning. I said, I don't care about this. But I mean, he brought me on board, and I needed to bring the rest of the management on board. And I mean, even challenges, as I mentioned earlier, DLP. I mean, I had programmers here complaining, I don't want this DLP, and I don't want this Intunes on my phone. I don't want an MDM. This is a BYD. I bought this device, and I don't want it. But at the end of the day, it's a process, and there's people, and you need to have all the people involved, and it's management, and it's the dedicated guy, and it's the external consultant. So it's a lot of challenges, but it's all something that can be handled even in very small companies. We're not that small, right? We're almost 60 people, but it's small size still.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and Upendra, from your point of view, it will be interesting to hear as well. I mean, you are in the buy now, pay later business, right? And this is a huge trend right now. I mean, I think that the COVID situation actually benefited you and companies such as Snap Finance, and I think that many households were dealing with a situation of low cash flows, and the buy now pay later situation allows them to keep on purchasing. And it will be interesting to hear, how do you see the main trends from your consumers, from your end consumers, and from the regulator on this specific aspect of the buy now, pay later BNPL?
You know, I'm super glad, and it's very, very rewarding and fulfilling to all of us to help our customers, especially when they are in dire need, right? So this BNPL space, sure, we are here for our customers, and it is very rewarding to be part and helping somebody who is actually needing that particular goods or services, if you will, and they can pay later, when they're going through tough times. So this is very rewarding and very fulfilling. And, our commitment did not change to the regulation. Our commitment did not change to the customers, where we wanted to make sure that we protect their information, like Tom was saying, right? I mean, that is a commitment. And then we will use the information only in certain purposes. So as the regulatory pressure come in, as these kind of trends, so when we are looking at the trends, what we have to go to the spirit of what regulators are after. And I completely agree that, there are multiple regulations and all this questionnaire to what Guy was talking about, there are so many nuances. It will be good to automate it so that, it gets a little bit easier on people like us. There are a few companies in space, but I would say for the entrepreneurs who are on the call or who will listen to this particular podcast, please think about how do we ease the job of the CISO in the fintech world as well as outside, and all these regulatory trends. So from the trend perspective, we will start seeing more and more, again, I'm getting back to the three themes, right? So the consumer trends will continue to evolve. So we'll have to go where the customer is. It might be the text-based payment, the mobile is obviously there, right? I mean, the WhatsApp, the WeChats of the world. So that's where the payment and the trend is gonna go. Omni-channel trend is there, in the sense that they will be making a phone call at the same time they want to secure a payment, and at the same time when the employee or the contact customer care support agent is at home, we don't want that particular credit card to be misused or mishandled. So that's one trend. So go where the consumer trend is while we are doing work from home, while we are enabling remote work. The second trend is, as we are looking at our enterprise, shackling all these four-wall boundaries, right? So it's no longer four-wall boundary. We have SaaS, we have public cloud, hybrid cloud, we have some in our data centers, we have some BPOs, so that's our organization structure. It's no longer that, hey, you have to just have these firewalls and three-tiered architectures. All those lines are broken right now, right? So that is gonna increase the challenge for us to demonstrate that we comply by all regulations, so the regulation process can slow down. So there is a huge opportunity for entrepreneurs who are listening to think about that, guys, how do we ease the job of the security professionals like me, where the compliance becomes very easy, or demonstration of that particular compliance becomes very easy. So, and the regulatory trends, they are going to increase, especially with all the supply chain attacks that we are seeing. The third party. So, like Tom was talking about the tax surface management, these are going to come, and these are going to, sure, it will be a lagging indicator or, laggards, but they will come. So how can we prepare ourselves for these three trends?
Yeah, and when you're talking about the fact that you are instructing entrepreneurs to start thinking on these aspects. And when you're talking to young fintech companies, it's definitely one aspect you should consider. Probably sooner is better. I don't know, Tom, what's your opinion about it? I mean, if you'll go to a fintech company or early stage entrepreneur, early stage fintech, what would be your recommendation for these guys? When should they start talking about compliance aspects and working on compliance aspects?
My honest answer, I think it's the earlier the better. It's easier as you're a small company to build the processes and then to follow when you grow. But real life, what we see is usually when the customer, their client's requirements come, then they go and start to deal with compliance. Again, it comes down to the budget, it comes down to the risk appetite of the business. I really suggest for early companies to do some sort of a minimum or some sort of something that they can work with, which is a risk assessment to understand what you're facing with, where are your risks, what are the assets that you're dealing with, and a penetration test to secure the platform. And from there to take it step by step and understand what your client is going to ask you for, and start winning those small wins every once in a while. But again, if you can start early, it will be much more easier, will relieve much more stress up ahead in the way, because when the client asks you for SOC 2 and you already have the deal pending, you want to do the SOC 2 in 2 weeks, but you can't do SOC 2 in 2 weeks. It takes time. There's a lot of action items to do. There's an auditor that needs to come and check everything. So if you can start earlier, it will be a better and a smooth sailing along the way. But again, there are limitations, and we have to live the life as they are presented to us.
Thanks for that, Tom. You're talking about audit, and it will be maybe interesting to hear from you guys in terms of the certificate you're holding. To what extent you are exposed to audits on this aspect? How do you see that, and how do you handle that?
Yeah, first of all, I wanted to say that I agree with Tom, of course. I mean, the sooner, I wish we would have started sooner. Yeah, I wish we would have started sooner. Yeah. To tell you the truth, there are not a lot of audits that we go after. It's in the sales process. I mean, I have customers for years that they didn't audit us, but we were never leaked as well. So I guess that we didn't have to go through any breaches. But they're very sensitive on all the, on the pre-sales process. It's very, I mean, we talked about the certifications. We talked about the questionnaires. I mean, these guys are seriously afraid of having their information breached, and they are regulated, and they have to go through the process. So they're making sure that we're going through that processes, and they have to check all the boxes and dot all the I's and cross those T's. We do have theoretically access to very sensitive information the customers are going through, and they can't have it leaked or breached. So, GDPR, that's crazy, right? GDPR, what's the number? It's 4% of overall annual revenue that could be fined. They don't want to pay 4% a fine.
Crazy.
It doesn't make any sense, but that's the fine, right? And they want to make sure that they don't have to go through that fine, and they're dependent on their vendors like us that make sure that they don't have to pay those fines.
So, before we wrap it up, and I'll see we running out of time, even though this is a super interesting discussion, we can keep on going this all night long. I have the feeling that you guys are the right team to further investigate this topic. But before we'll wrap it up, and thank you all, maybe in a quick sentence, how do you see the future of this segment? How do you see the future of compliance and security? And again, let's focus on the fintech segment and cyber to fintech companies. How do you see, and where do you see it going? Tom, let's start with you.
So I think really the fact that the attack surface is expanding significantly, using cloud providers, working from home, having different cloud hosting services. I think that's a trend, and I think securing that's one of the biggest challenges. Knowing what the different team are using is a challenge, so securing that is a bigger challenge. So that's my take on that.
Cloud security. I'll take that as a
Cloud security and expanded scope of companies.
good. Right. Okay. Thanks for that. Upendra, what's your insights on that?
My insight is the future is bright. I'm always always optimistic. That's my trend. We will find a way, and then it's just a matter of protecting our customers in the right way, and we will get through this. Right? We are very resilient species, so we will continue to do that.
We are, and I'll adopt your method here. If it works for you, it can work for all of us. Thanks for that. And Guy, any last sentences?
Yeah, the future is bright as well. I appreciate. I love that. We just read the news in Israel. I don't know if you guys read that. Of course you did. Google is going to be opening up the cloud in Israel as well, which is a great step forward for the local Israeli companies. But the cloud is the trends, right? And even financial institutions, which were not used to working in the cloud at all, they're going to be moving to the cloud. And working from home, we already talked about. That's a huge trend, which brings us in the mobile field to say that BYOD is a big trend, bring your own device. So employees which used to be regulated with their corporate phones, they're going to be moving more and more to a BYOD environment. So it makes our world more complicated, mobile capture, since you have to have WhatsApp and a BYOD device, and it makes the whole world more complicated. So as much as I want the future to be brighter, it's going to be more complicated.
So you have an argument offline, you two. But I'll take your insights here as well, Guy. And thank you very much. It was a great honor to host you all. Guy Levit from Telemessage, Upendra Mardikar from Snap Finance, Tom Roseanne for GRC, and Sharon, thank you very much for hosting us with CICC here today. And I'm looking forward to many other insightful discussions such as this.
Thank you,
thank you
Nir.
so much.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks for
Thank you, Nir,
Thanks
for hosting and organizing this session. I think the one takeaway is just trying to summarize what all of you said is that we'll see more devices, more ways of communications, and therefore we need more security. And the sooner companies, pay attention to that aspect and not just developing their solution or their system, it will be easier for the solution at the end of the day to be compliant with all the regulations, no matter where it is around the world. The world is flat. So with that, thank you all for being with us today. Thank you for